So something that a lot of people are talking about in the Yu-Gi-Oh community right now is the most recent YCS. And I know a lot of people are talking about how it shattered records and how it was the biggest YCS of all time. And overall, it's very promising for the Yu-Gi-Oh community at large because it means the game is still alive and well. But the thing that people are talking about more than anything is what happened in the semifinal match with Team Samurai X1, one of the biggest Yu-Gi-Oh YouTubers around right now, and how he lost the match. Long story short, he lost the match because he said, "God damn."
Most dangerous card if it does get to resolve, and
Guy Ash, a Snake Eye Oak, as well as a one for
cross out and triple tactics. Having those two cards in your hand.
Just saying that caused him enough of a penalty to lose the match. And I think this needs to be talked about because it kind of will give you an idea of like the direction of this game that so many people love to play. The fact that saying something like this could get you disqualified puts into perspective just how conservative Konami is. And I don't mean conservative in the political sense. I mean conservative in the sense that they just aren't with, they are keeping things the same as it was 20 years ago, right? Because 20 years ago, Yu-Gi-Oh was a kid's game, right? It was a game that people played at school on playgrounds. It didn't really have any rules. It was just a fun game to play with your friends. And at the time, if Konami made the decision to disqualify a person for swearing, it would make complete sense because mostly kids are consuming this content and they want to make sure it's okay for kids, and more importantly, their parents are okay with viewing this kind of content. So you know, in 2002, fine. I completely understand them not wanting to show swear words, but that was 20 years ago, right? And Konami just refuses to understand that the audience has grown up. Like, if you look at the Yu-Gi-Oh, the YCS live stream on YouTube, you can't comment on it because they listed it under YouTube Kids. And YouTube Kids doesn't have any, you can't comment on YouTube Kids content. Kids are not watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Why would you do that? Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no longer a kid's game, especially when you look at the decks that people are playing these days, right? In Yu-Gi-Oh!, right, to play Snake Eyes, pure Snake Eyes or Snake Eyes Fire King, whatever you want to call it, in order to play that deck, the deck that you basically need to compete at a YCS level, it costs over $1,000. What kid has $1,000 to spend on cardboard? It makes no sense. It's like they refuse to grow up with their audience. And, you know, even from like okay, let's say that, you know, Konami had a reason to still market it towards kids. They're not even doing that right. Because and I want to bring to your attention this show that recently came out called Has Been Hotel, right? It's you've probably heard of it. It's a show where, you know, there's a girl and she's in hell and she's helping sinners become normal again. And the show is very vulgar. It's very crass. There's like, you know, sex, violence, and all of the above.
My drugs! Damn it!
The thing about that show is that it feels like a kid's show. And that's something that's reflected in its demographic, right? It's mostly like teenagers who are watching the show. And we kind of live in a world right now where, because people have access to the internet at such a young age, like teenagers and kids, they see curse words, they see swearing, they see sex, they see all of these things at such a young age. Kids, especially teenagers, aren't watching shows that are sterilized like that anymore. It's like they've seen darker things by advent of just being on the internet. There's just a fundamental difference in how Yu-Gi-Oh! Treats its audience versus a lot of other games. For example, if you look, like, you know, like it or hate it, social media is kind of the way that a lot of people consume media in the world. And like, just go on to the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Instagram page, where they didn't even bother to change it to, like, it literally says the official Twitter of Konami. It's like you didn't even care enough to change the name. All the content is like, you can tell they barely even tried with a lot of it. And, you know, that's fine. I know a lot of people don't care for social media, but on that same note, compare that to Magic the Gathering, right? Magic the Gathering, if you go to their YouTube page or their Instagram page or their Twitter page, they care so much more about connecting with the people who play the game. They understand who plays the game and why they play it. Konami doesn't do the same thing. And I know you can argue that the disconnect is caused because they are a Japanese company and they are focused on their Japanese audience more so than their American audience, which kind of makes sense when you think about like the OCG versus the TCG, because in Japan, Yu-Gi-Oh is just so much more popular in Japan, and they make cards that specifically cater to their Japanese audience, right? In America, it's kind of, it's just not like that, you know. A lot of other Yu-Gi tubers have commented on how being like a TCG player just isn't as fun as being an OCG player, and the reason is that Yu-Gi-Oh kind of treats the TCG as like, oh, it's my alarm going off. Yu-Gi-Oh just kind of treats the TCG as like a little side project that makes them more money. And I feel like that's the disconnect a lot of us feel, you know? And I think what makes this hurt all the more and what makes this even worse is that there are glimpses at a Konami that truly cares about what people want to see. And I think that is evident in things like Card Chronicles, right? Like, if you're not familiar, Yu-Gi-Oh cards have a lot of really cool lore, a lot of really cool storylines tied in with a lot of their cards. And they teased an animation studio that will essentially bring all these to life. And that is the coolest thing that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, the idea that we're bringing these storylines to life, that we'll get an anime not about the trading card game, but about people in the world, like Arcane. It's not a show about people playing League of Legends. It was a show about the people in the world doing things, so that even people who don't play the game can still jump in and be like, oh my god, that's super cool. And I truly hope that Card Chronicles becomes a thing. I think they should change the name away from Card Chronicles to something else, because, you know, if you kind of advertise it as a Yu-Gi-Oh thing, I feel like people will be like, oh, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh thing, and not even care about it. It makes me feel bad, like, that Sam got disqualified for something so, like, that literally everybody does at their locals, you know? There's a difference between being disrespectful and being, like, a human being. Dude, I'm sorry, but when it costs $1,000 to be even competitively viable for a competition, you don't get to say that people are disqualified for saying a curse word. Like, that is ridiculous. And this is even more evident by, like, if you actually went to YCS, right? Because at YCS, there was, like, a little section off to the side for parents, right? The section was maybe, like, 5 feet by 5 feet. And there were, like, maybe 2 parents in that entire pen. It's insane when you consider that this is the biggest YCS ever, right? Kids aren't doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Adults are. I think that with all of the coming Yu-Gi-Oh! Content that we have, like with the card game Chronicles, the VR game, and just like, you know, there seems to be this general idea that people want to find niche hobbies and come back to old things. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is about to experience a really, really big renaissance. But it's like, if you're met with a game that's borderline impossible to get into because it's complex, a game that doesn't respect your age and who you are as a player, I feel like it's just going to turn people away. And that's the last thing I want, because I love this game. The best case scenario for this is that Konami sees people's outrage on this, corrects their mistakes, and does better. Anyway, thank you for watching. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope, again, I've only been playing this game for 3 months. I love this game. I truly think that this is far and away one of the best games I've ever played, and I truly, 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 truly hope that things like this don't cause its eventual downfall. So yeah, again, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one later. Bye.